Residents of Lord's Court in South London, Peckham, made continual complaints about a smell of death in the apartment block. An unnamed resident had reported that maggots had fallen from her ceiling when she changed her light bulb. The residents were left horrified after police found medical secretary Sheila Celione dead inside her flat above where the maggots had fallen. Her skeletal remains were all that was left, as Sheila had died in 2019 and she was not found until February 2022. One neighbour had a written record of when they first called the housing association Peabody about Sheila's absence and an awful smell coming from her apartment. That was October 10th, 2019, 2 months after Sheila died and more than 2 years before she would eventually be found. The residents even sent messages to each other asking if Sheila was dead as early as June 2020. Sheila's last sighting was August 14th, 2019, when she spoke to her GP to organise an appointment for the following day, which she failed to attend. Her bank records showed her last active transaction was in August after she paid her rent to the Peabody Trust. When Sheila's bank account ran out of funds and rent was no longer paid, Peabody applied for universal credit on her behalf and had it paid directly to them. A gas safety check in April 2020 could not be completed as contractors could not get into her flat. Instead of sending someone to visit, Peabody turned off her gas supply. When the Housing Association finally decided to send someone due to multiple complaints, they asked the police to check on her, where her tragic circumstances came to light. Sheila's body was so decomposed and skeletal by the time she was found, it was impossible to determine her cause of death. Sadly, only one family member went to her funeral, Sheila's half-brother who hadn't been in contact with her for years, and a representative from Peabody. On September 20th, 2019, a fire broke out in a block of flats in Western Germany. While evacuating the building, firemen made a tragically gruesome discovery: the skeletonized remains of a man known as Heinz H., who was 59. Alongside him was the dead body of his dog, who is thought to have starved to death inside the flat. Upon further investigation, it emerged that the man's postbox had been overflowing for 8 years, and his car was parked and decaying outside. Heinz was last seen alive in 2011. His bills and rent were paid due to an automatic instruction to the bank, and his death was not realised as no one had knocked on his door to check on him until the accidental fire. 38-year-old Laura Winham had schizophrenia and lived in social housing in Woking, Surrey, and she had become estranged from her family. In 2014, a referral was made to the Woking Community Mental Health Recovery, with her GP flagging that Laura appeared to have untreated mental health issues. Surrey police officers visited Laura in October 2017 and reported to the Surrey County Council that she had been self-neglecting, had little food, and appeared unaware of how to access local services for help. The notes on Laura's calendar stopped shortly after the visit, with one of the last entries reading, "I need help." On May 2021, Surrey Police received a concern for safety report for Laura's address and went to investigate. Tragically, they found Laura's mummified, almost skeletal body after lying dead in her flat alone for nearly 4 years. Laura's heartbroken family reluctantly kept away from her because Laura's schizophrenia had caused her to believe they would harm her, but eventually made the safety call to police to check on her. Laura had to be identified through dental records, and her cause of death was not established, but it is believed she died just 1 month after her last police visit in October 2017. The gas supply to Laura's property was even cut off in January 2019. And even though Laura didn't respond to multiple calls and letters by social workers, her case was sadly closed without anyone ever checking up on her. On January 13th, 2023, in Cork, Ireland, council staff headed to a boarded-up home for a clear-out of the property after reports of vermin infestation in the area. They were horrified to find the full skeletal remains of Tim O'Sullivan in bed in his bedroom. Officers called to investigate the discovery found butter dating from 2001 in the fridge. Foul play was not suspected, and neighbours had said they thought Tim, who was described as reclusive, had relocated to England. Social welfare records indicated that Tim had received job seekers allowances from October 4, 2000 to January 23, 2001. His claim was closed automatically though from January 23rd as he failed to collect the last 3 payments on the 9th, 11th and 23rd of January. Maureen O'Sullivan, Tim's sister, said they would write to each other by letter, but after their mother passed in 1990, Tim stopped writing and she had presumed that he'd gone back to England. She did knock on his door on July 24th in 2003, but didn't get an answer, and she stated that after trying to peer in the window, it looked like nobody had lived there for a while. She stated that she did not know who later boarded up the house, but that Tim was never reported missing because the family thought he had gone back to the UK. Coroner Dr. Michael Kennedy estimated Tim had died on a day unknown between the 9th and 23rd of January 2001. He also stated that there was nothing to suggest that Tim had experienced anything other than a peaceful death. In July 2011, the police knocked down the door of an increasingly derelict house in Sydney, Australia. They discovered the skeletal remains of Natalie Jean Wood, a month before she would have turned 87. The last confirmed sighting of Natalie was on December 30th, 2003, when she went to her local pharmacy to pick up some medication. Police believe that Natalie died 8 years prior by falling and not being able to get back up. Natalie had been diagnosed with a brain tumour, and before she was last seen, it is said she was no longer on speaking terms with her brother and sister-in-law after they refused to care for her. An inquest into the timings of Natalie's death found that she probably fell over in her bedroom around February 2004 and died alone sometime after that, but how long she lay there alive trying to possibly get help, no one will ever know. Other relatives did not try and contact her, and her neighbours assumed she had moved in with family. The local council and utility companies didn't notice anything amiss even though her unpaid bills were piling up. Natalie had no children and left no will to claim her estate, which included nearly $80,000 in the bank and the house, which sold for just over $1 million at auction, despite being described by estate agents as completely uninhabitable. The unnamed buyer said he would honour the previous owner, stating, "I felt very sad by the story. I'm going to find her grave and leave flowers on it. I won't forget her." In 2009, 25-year-old Larry Manilo Moncada was working at a no-frill supermarket in Council Bluff, Iowa. On November 28, 2009, Larry's parents reported him missing, telling authorities that their son became upset and ran out of their home. He was sadly never seen alive again. 10 years later, on January 24, 2019, crews were removing coolers at the then vacant grocery store and discovered a body behind one of the coolers. That body was sadly identified as Larry. Investigators believe Larry ran from his home, went to the store where he worked, and climbed on top of the coolers, and then fell into a gap roughly 18 inches between the back of the cooler and the wall, becoming stuck. His autopsy indicated no signs of trauma, and his death has been classified as an accident. The store wasn't searched when Larry went missing because he wasn't scheduled to work that day. The coolers were in the back room, and employees would often climb up onto them to relax while on break. It is unknown how Larry fell into the 18-inch gap, but police believe as Larry had fallen sideways and was wedged in, he likely would not have been able to scream for help. And even if he could scream, it would have been extremely difficult to hear him over the coolers. It is believed the cold may have delayed any decaying and smell.